You give yourself a really hard time over getting it right. And the reality is you don't want to have a negative impact on your child, but you are only human and you're doing this for the first time. Even if you're doing it for the third time or the fourth time, you're parenting a different child and you're a different person as you go through that experience, and you will never get it 100% right. And your child is going to have trauma because of the things that you do. And I think I'm an eldest daughter, okay. I'm an eldest child, I'm quite type A, I'm very much a perfectionist in most respects. And I think that surrender has been the biggest lesson for me.
This podcast is for education and information purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Welcome to the Motherhood Clinic, a podcast about caring for mothers after childbirth, led by clinical experience and real-life stories. If you're a new mum and ever asked yourself, is what I'm going through normal? Should I be worried? Or who should I ask for help? Then this podcast is for you. It's for anyone navigating those early weeks, months, or even years after having a baby. Each episode brings together voices from across the motherhood journey, from clinicians, experts, and mothers from all walks of life. We're here to help you feel more empowered in your unique motherhood journey. We believe in a better start to motherhood.
So we're now relocated.
We have relocated. Much better view.
Better view. Less party music for now. So I wanted to come back on some interesting insights with regards to how people are looking and acting towards women's health, what some of the barriers are, the role of policy, and what is the shift that's required by various stakeholders in order to make change happen. We've identified some quite clear challenges that we have as people that are building in femtech or in that space or women's health. What do you think is key things that people can start to champion to make the changes that we would like to see in the industry?
So I obviously have just spoken about a load of things that maybe frustrate me on a personal level, and some of the more challenging observations that I've witnessed out in the space. But I actually think that women's health has almost all of the right ingredients. I think there are two things that are missing. But what I will say is there's that old adage that if you want to get something done, ask a mum. Because mums juggle, as you said, lots of balls, spin lots of plates. They're maximally efficient. They just get it. And I think my experience of becoming a mum was that I really thought I understood it, and then I've become one, and I'm like, oh wow, I had no clue. Sorry to all the mums out there. I'm sorry to my mum. I'm sorry to your mum. I'm sorry to every mum out there. I've just become to truly, viscerally appreciate how incredible mums and women are. I've also had that it said that women's health knowledge is tribal, and I really do believe that, in the sense that women broadly support women. I think there's such huge energy in the space for change. There's some incredible solutions. What's missing is there's obviously a big conversation about how there's a huge lack of funding going to female founders, even less so, Black female founders, and, in women's health, in the board. I think the female founders, it's in the 2% range, and for Black female founders, it's like not even 0.5%. There's an issue with funding, I think, there, and that is a systemic issue. And I know that there are lots of initiatives to try and address that. I think like bias that exists, the people we consider VC, private equity, the people who are writing checks, their understanding of what women's health is, their acceptance of it, and some of that almost prudish kind of disposition, talking about vaginas and breasts and estrogen and all of those kinds of things makes them feel incredibly uncomfortable. That is a challenge that really does affect the flow of money into the space. But I also think, as I said earlier, that it's policy that really does also influence these things from an innovation perspective, but also women's health perspective. What is needed is true commitment to addressing these issues and not pull back and not draw back, because I think, as I said, it's eroded trust. And I think it's really disheartening for people who are putting in the legwork, trying to solve these problems, to then, have the rug pulled out from under them time and time again. There's definitely people in the political sphere now, and appreciating that there's a big question marks over kind of leadership of the NHS and healthcare. NHS England disappearing and some question marks over leadership, I think. And so I think what we need is some strong leadership and some strong commitment from them to tackle these issues in a meaningful way, but also measuring them, so holding themselves accountable. So it's not just commitment, but it's accountability. And probably it's the accountability piece that's missing. And I think that would be so warmly welcomed. Other thing I would say is, with all the energy that exists for women's health, there's so much going on that it's almost overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I think that can also, I don't want to say be distracting, because that feels like it's doing a disservice to the work that's going on, and it gives, for example, funders an excuse. However, I think because there's so much going on, I see so much opportunity for collaboration, which would make the impact of the work that's going on so much stronger. And so, they say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so I see that. But I think, unfortunately, there's a tension between, there is a need for urgency, but there is a need for longevity. And it's really hard to find the right balance, because often you have to trade one off for the other. And so I think we're just not well enough set up to address both. But I'm super optimistic about what is to come, because the people I know in the space are genuinely just so resilient, and almost to a fault where they just shouldn't have to be. They are brilliant, brilliant people, and they're addressing such critical problems. And, for example, you talk about the Motherhood Clinic addressing postnatal care. Why is that a gap? Yes. Everyone who has a baby experiences postnatal health.
Yes.
The entire family experiences postnatal health.
Yes.
And yet that drops off a cliff. I was talking to my friend who's a midwife, and lots of friends ask her advice, and she said, I don't have answers, because my remit finishes after the baby's 24 days old. Then I don't know the answers. I don't know what to do. And so, of course, we have health visitors and all that kind of thing. But it just, for someone who has gone through that experience quite recently and broadly had a good experience, it still felt very thin, very loose. And even now I'm like, I need to get my baby weighed, because he's not being weighed now until he's a year officially. Do I need to make those appointments? What should I be looking out for?
Yeah.
How do I do that? Because, if I want to go to my local one, I have to, I think, call up and book an appointment. There are others that are maybe like a little bit further away, which I could just walk into, but like the information of where to go and how to access them is not all in one place. So even something as simple as that doesn't exist.
We talk about AI and all these use cases, and let's just get the basics right.
Yeah.
Which is, can we just fix a very obvious system where we just want to have a way to simple processes, very open goals that aren't being addressed, that don't really need AI or anything, just a bit of a common sense approach or sense of ownership. Where does responsibility lie? Now, it's not as simple as it lies with one person. Obviously, there's shared responsibility, but who's taking accountability of certain aspects of care? There was another couple of points that I thought was really helpful that I'd love to dive into, actually. And one of the points you made was this notion of a lived experience. How do you bring that to someone that hasn't been through that? Have you got any thoughts there?
I do, and I probably sound really frustrated through this conversation, but one of the things is, like, everyone knows women, and so I just think that there are some people who unfortunately are in positions making decisions that really lack humanity and humility, and that's really sad, and I don't actually know how to change that. That speaks of a much wider patriarchal systemic challenge, and I think a generational challenge in lots of respects. I don't understand how you wouldn't be able to relate to some of that. But I think in part because a lot of the conversations I mentioned, like women's health is tribal, we have conversations amongst ourselves, and we don't always feel comfortable having conversations with men, because the assumption is that men don't get it. And I understand why. I think, though, that there is a role for women to play here. And don't get me wrong, I think we are hardwired to protect ourselves. We have such challenging experiences throughout life, and lots of us have had really negative experiences, whether it's through the health system or at the hands of another man. We see the statistics about domestic violence of all types. We see the statistics about, women being murdered in the UK, and it's all really frightening. And that's not to say that, every single woman will go through that, but every woman has an experience on a spectrum of that. And I think that there is like a hardwired protection mechanism almost, but where, men might feel obviously awkward talking about some things, I think women also do too, because there's just been this traditional sense of shame that comes along with being a woman and experiencing health. And, fertility issues is a prime example. It's long been attributed to women when there have been fertility struggles within a couple. But I do think that women can potentially be more open in allowing men to come into those conversations in a way that they feel women feel comfortable with. But I think also the men who show up and show that they want to do the work, I think we have to give grace to that and know that they won't always get it right. In the same way that I know when I enter into spaces that are not mine, with other groups that get disproportionately affected by, various different things, that not centering it on myself, and I'm there to learn, and I'm there to use my privilege to be able to lift those challenges up and to support them, and also have the humility to know that I'm not going to get it right every time and be willing to learn. But that can be, the idea of getting something wrong is quite scary, I think, also when these issues are so emotive.
Yes.
And no one likes to offend anyone. So I think it's that. I think it's creating safe spaces where the people who show intention can come together and figure it out together.
That's really helpful. I think there's a lot there that I think hopefully viewers can take away in terms of having the courage to innovate in that space, and how, again, people from different areas can find ways to break down some of those barriers or be invited in. Another interesting point that I think you talked about was this notion of the tribe and the value of your tribe or your community. Love to, if you're open to sharing it, a bit of your personal experience as you went through, you're going through motherhood. But are you okay to share a bit there?
Of course. So I definitely benefited from digital and in real life communities, I think, through my experience. And I guess to give an overview, I actually had a really good pregnancy. I didn't expect to have a good pregnancy. I've suffered with chronic back problems quite extensively through my life, and some medication challenges that really deeply affected my quality of life and created a lot of fear around pregnancy and birth.
Okay.
So I think my entire approach, and I think our approach as a couple and as a family to the whole experience, was to minimize our expectations as much as possible, and then anything after that was a bonus. I think it's a very unique experience. I think, to be honest, pregnancy, birth, motherhood, and transitioning into a family is a unique experience for everybody. I don't think anyone goes and experiences it in the exact same way, and I think that's often part of what's difficult. Lots of people share their experiences and you can learn so much from that, but the honest truth is that there's a lot you just don't know until you go through it. So I had a great pregnancy. Was really lucky to be able to work with a pelvic and women's health specialist. He was a personal trainer and physiotherapist from very, very early in my pregnancy, because I had this anxiety around my chronic back problems, not knowing whether or not it would exacerbate that, or, I know in some cases it can alleviate some of those symptoms. So I worked with her very early on and built a really deep connection with her that I think gave me a lot of confidence that I was in the hands of someone who has been there, done it, supported women with challenges, without challenges, and understood me and what mattered to me. I love being active and doing exercise, and knowing that there was someone who would support me through my pregnancy to make sure that I could do as much as I was capable of was a massive burden that lifted from my mental health, because activity and exercise is such an important tool, certainly for me, and I know lots of other people with their mental health will stop, let alone in pregnancy. So that was the first thing that I did. I think there was also I carried a lot of privilege through that experience, and part of that is running my own business, where I didn't have to worry about what does my career look like after. I'm my own boss. I work with my husband, and part of the reason for setting up what we have is so that we can set up life in the way that we want to. So it's not just like, how do we fit our outside of work around work? It's how do we build everything together to create a framework around the things that are most important to us, and gives us the sense of freedom that we need, and we can show up for our family, each other, and our child in the way that we want to. I'll caveat that by saying we haven't cracked it, but it's a work in progress. Like, you're learning all the time, things are changing all the time. So there were lots of things I didn't have to worry about, and so I think that helped keep my stresses through pregnancy to a minimum, and I could really focus on, in part, the experience. It kind of just happened rather than me sort of absorbing myself into it. But I could also just like focus on work because I enjoy my work. I'm really lucky. I love the people that I work with. And actually the experience of going on maternity leave was really hard for me. As it happens, I didn't really end up doing much of that. So I had intended to take, so I was due like middle end of December. I was due to finish up work the end of November. When you run a business, there's always something that needs doing. And I think probably I basically just kept going until I gave birth. And that was good in lots of ways. It kept me distracted, it kept me busy. But it also meant that I felt like I was investing in my postnatal experience, because the more that I could get done and the better I can set up my team and my company before going away and having my child, the best that gives us the best chance as a family to be able to recover and have that postnatal experience that we needed through all of this shape shifting we were about to go through. And so, yeah, that is what I did. I definitely scaled back, and I think had to manage my energy levels. To be honest, mostly at the beginning. The beginning was the hardest part for me, where you're very tired, you don't feel very well. I think once I kind of got past that, I was fine. Pretty much up until I gave birth. I think I faced a few challenges in terms of things that I had to deal with professionally, where there are always people who don't have good intentions, and you always come across them, I think, at times where you could really do without that. And I think people who leveraged the experience that I was going through to benefit themselves, which was disappointing. But I think, again, lower your expectations, have none, and then you know, you're never going to be disappointed. So I think that I found that was very difficult, both psychologically and just practically. And then I think so I'd given a lot of thought to my pregnancy and my birth. I had an elective C-section, which, you know, for the reasons that I've talked about, but also because it just felt like it was the right thing for us as a family to give us the best start to family life. As it happens, we were undiagnosed frank breech, which meant that although I'd been examined and had been assured that he was head down and really engaged right up until the day of giving birth, it turns out that actually his head was in my ribs, and so were his feet. And so where they thought it was his head, it was his bum. And so had I had basically a labor initiated, the outcome would have been significantly different. And you know, luckily we ended up having a good experience, and there wasn't a huge amount that went wrong, but it was a real wake-up call to me that, and also, you know, I felt disappointed, I felt let down, because surely as professionals who are experienced in babies and birth and pregnancy, you would be able to tell the difference between a head and a bottom of a baby. Had I decided, because even right up until going in for the section, probably the last 3 weeks, I was really questioning whether that was the right thing to do, and whether I was giving that was the best thing for my baby, the best start for my baby, because I know that there are lots of benefits if you can have a great experience of vaginal birth. And so I did think a few times, should I just let nature take its course and see what happens? And thankfully I didn't, because that would have been really catastrophic for both of us. And so I really stand by the fact that I think you as a mother advocate for yourself. I was really lucky. My husband is clinical. In fact, he delivered babies in the exact theatre where we delivered our baby, which is a whole different and challenging experience for him in lots of ways, because he's gone from being on the clinical end and the business end to being on the patient side, where you know exactly what is going on. And you're outsourcing the care of your child and the two people you love most in the world, and you know exactly what's happening, and you can hear the conversations that are happening. You can't hide from that. And so I felt lucky because I could outsource my clinical anxiety to James, because I just knew that he's been in this situation lots of times from a clinical perspective, and if there's anything to worry about, he'll let me know. So I don't need to worry about that. And again, that's a huge privilege. So yeah, I think he supported me we talked at length about our decision with birth and what I wanted, and he supported me because he trusted me to know what was right for me and for our baby. And he was very good, again, being able to provide clinical rationale for different things and really be able to explain what that experience of a C-section would look like. When he used to work in anaesthetics, that was really reassuring to me. Advocate for yourself, and if something feels off, don't let up on that. And I can't say that anything particularly felt off for me, but I just knew that that was the experience that I wanted, and I'm glad I held firm to that. I think postnatally, I didn't give myself the best chance of success as a mother because I jumped back into work because I felt that's what the business needed. I had said I was going to take 3 months off. The reality is I didn't work solidly every day, but I worked every day of that time. I was taking calls. So I had my child on the 16th. I was taking calls in the break between Christmas and New Year, and I didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
And part of me was telling myself that it was helping me feel more normal and have a sense of normality. And I think to an extent it did. But what I really needed was to recover and to give myself the grace of that break. And I think in some respects it was easier when he was younger and he just sleeps and feeds. But I think probably even quite recently, as recent as maybe a couple of months ago, I think the consequences of that, I felt that very deeply, and I really struggled for probably about 2 months. And there is lots of things still to work through now, where no matter the fact that I have a very supportive husband and co-founder, I felt a lot of pressure. I have an amazing team who have my back and continually have my back, and there was a lot that I didn't have to worry about, but I just feel a huge responsibility in my business. And that was really hard. And I think you are not the person you were before you gave birth, after you gave birth.
Yes.
Still figuring out who that is. But also you've been through this trauma. 7 layers of your body have been cut through if you've had a C-section, and if you haven't, you might have experienced different kinds of trauma. But birth is traumatic, whichever way you look at it. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Can't even. You step through a portal, and you're in a hormone soup. You're recovering from major surgery, and you're adjusting to caring for this whole human. And I can remember sitting on the side of the bed in the operating theatre waiting for my spinal tap to be administered, and just tears streaming down my face, not because I was sad, but because I was so overwhelmed with the magnitude of the change that was about to happen in my life. That's utterly irreversible in a positive way, but I didn't know what that looked like, and that's terrifying. And the weight of the responsibility of this small human, it felt like jumping off a cliff, and nothing can prepare you for that. And I think I'm not very good at asking for help, and this experience has taught me to accept help when people offer it. It's taught me to get more comfortable with asking for help. I'm still not good at it, but I'm better at it. And required a lot of vulnerability and honesty in our relationship. And I'm really lucky now. Again, we run our own business. So James is now on paternity leave, and I'm back in the business substantively. And I joke that it's a real joy to be able to send emails with 2 hands. And I'm actually really enjoying being able to focus on business and then focus on my child. But even in that experience, I feel torn because I'm sat at my desk, I'm getting on with work. And in those moments, I even forget I have a child. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. But then I almost startle myself into remembering I have a child, and then feel guilty for enjoying the fact that I'm at work and I'm not with him. And then also almost grieving for the postnatal experience I didn't have, and wanting to be out doing what you would probably consider to be like normal maternity leave activities. And I'm really lucky that I've been supported by an amazing group of mums who are in my friendship circle already, and mums who have been going through the journey at the same time as me, all very different journeys. And I think that has been it's been amazing in some respects, and they're always so supportive, and they're like, oh, you're it's so inspiring. And that makes me feel sad, because I don't want someone else to feel that I don't think people feel like they have to do what I did, but I don't want anyone to think that that's the right thing to do, because it wasn't right for me. And it isn't right for me. And there's still a lot that I have to work through, I think, to make peace with that. But at the end of the day, I would say that, we're so lucky, and we don't have immediate family, and we are too terrified to put him in nursery just yet. And he's so little and so precious, and it terrifies me. And so I still think we've done the right thing by our family. And I think you give yourself a really hard time over getting it right. And the reality is you don't want to have a negative impact on your child, but you are only human and you're doing this for the first time. Even if you're doing it for the third time or the fourth time, like my mum did, you're parenting a different child and you're a different person as you go through that experience, and you will never get it 100% right. And your child is going to have trauma because of the things that you do. And I think I'm an eldest daughter. Okay. I'm an eldest child. I'm quite type A. I'm very much a perfectionist in most respects. And I think that surrender has been the biggest lesson for me. And yeah, surrender, but knowing that society isn't set up for us to succeed in this experience. And I felt pressure, and I run my own business. I don't have a boss. And so I think coming all the way back around talking about a sandwich generation, we're expected as women to, mother like we don't have a career, and to have a career as if we don't have a child. Yep. And whilst we've come such a long way culturally to support women to have careers, I hate that we can't have everything. We're not set up so that women can have the best of everything. And I speak to so many other women who are mothers, and I ask them, how do you do it? And no one knows. Everyone's just muddling through and doing their best. No one has any concrete answers. And there's no role model you can look to be like, that person is smashing it. Because they might look like they're smashing it.
Absolutely.
But they have their own struggles. It's not easy. It's just what you see is only a small part of the story, I think. And so it's definitely shown me that you really never know what somebody else is going through. And it's shown me that in a really visceral way. I always knew it and understood it to a degree, and now I really feel it. Anyway, that's my story.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
It's very personal. And I think it also highlights, as you're saying, there's this almost like this slight paradox is, every person out there, especially women, will identify with an experience of motherhood in some ways. Either you're a mother, you're becoming a mother, you're a daughter, etc. But yeah, it's paradoxically the most unique journey as well, which is, I guess, is that contradiction between you feeling like you can reach out to other people and relate to what they're doing and feel that sense of, hey, I'm in this together with you. But it's also my very own, very personal journey, which even I don't know. I talk about this, not having been a mother, but I can relate to that on a much lesser scale as a father.
Yeah, of course.
Right, which is...
I think you shouldn't diminish that, by the way. Because I think that is a journey in and of itself, and I think it's also not easy. I do believe the woman carries a lot of the burden, but I think dads don't get an easy ride, and I think culturally we don't set dads up for success either. Yeah. It's becoming more common now for shared leave and all of that kind of thing. Again, like the systems and structures aren't in place for that to become commonplace or to be able to truly support people in that decision making.
Absolutely.
And what that looks like in practice. So don't diminish your experience.
Absolutely. No, you're right. And one thing I wanted to come back to with you, is what people come into the experience of motherhood with. And by that, I mean understanding your nature. You've got your own business, you're a certain personality. That's going to lend itself to a certain experience that you may or may not have, or a certain approach to which you look at things. If I talk about, our personal journey, we're not in that position where we have our own business. So we're trying to manage, my wife's in the NHS working full time. I was working full time at the same time. And so it was the typical baggage of like, well, how the hell do we manage this? I've got 2 weeks, you've got 9 months, I think. And then there's the money stuff, etc. So everyone will be coming out, and also with different personalities. You talked about surrender. I think on both sides of that is a sense of acceptance, which is whatever we can prepare only so much. Yeah. And even if you have all the insights in the world, all the data, etc., there'll be things that you just have to either surrender to or accept. And I think it's that, and it is probably for the first time, certainly for us. And, when I talk about my journey, so my wife's an obstetrician and a consultant level at that. So I felt the complete opposite, which is I wanted to be there to be supportive, and I can do that emotionally, which will tell you if I was or not. But in terms of actual care, she's the one saying, well, let me look at it. I'll say, no, just sit down and be a patient. And I think part of what I hear from you is there's obviously a very personal journey that you go through as a mother with everything you come in there with, your attitude, your personality. But how does everyone around you, your husband, your family as well, how do they come on board with you as well? And how do you invite that, as you're saying, ask for help, or just be open to the fact that there are other people that want to be there with you, or that hopefully can be there with you, in addition to advocating for yourself as well, so that there's a sense of yes, it's a scary time, but two, how do I invite people that hopefully are all on the same side together, or create some sense that, we're in this together, and to do that. I think it's more just hearing you talk so openly about your very personal experience. I think it's understanding, I think for people listening to this, is one, having a level of insight into what you're coming into that personally with. But as you're saying, that sense, I think the big take home, as you mentioned, that sense of surrendering to what you don't know, and knowing that there will be this cliff edge, or both psychologically, but then we can talk a lot more about how the system supports that, but what you yourself can do within your realm. So I think there's plenty more there, which we probably can't tackle in this one conversation. But again, I wanted to really say that, I do really appreciate it. It takes a lot, I think, to be so open and to go on that very personal journey. So I appreciate you providing that insight into your thing. I know we've spoken for a good hour and a half. I think we've covered a lot of ground. So again, I really appreciate everything you have to offer, and your views on the industry and what we can learn, and hopefully those that are building in health tech and in women's health, how they can look at the category and understand what the future might look like, but also to families, mothers, fathers, carers that are part of that journey as well, that what we can do personally as well. So again, just wanted to say thank you for sharing that, and yeah, hopefully we can do this again. But thank you again.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah,
it's cathartic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't suppose I need to, but obviously you can tell people that probably that will know you already, but about the channels they can find you on, or things that you're working on at the moment that you might want to promote a bit more, but just to leave you with a bit more, like where they can find out more about.
So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Jessica Somauroo, Somauroo, and you can find our company and what we do at Somx, so that's SOMX. And from there you can sign up to all of our newsletters. If you're up for some a humorous take on what's going on in the health tech world week by week, then definitely sign up to Health Tech Pigeon and listen into the podcast where I attempt to replicate 8 out of 10 cats for health techs. Yeah, if that's your thing, I'll see you there. If not, I'll see you hopefully at an event or around soon, I guess.
Jess, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.